Welcome to the empowering world of the Ladies Who Leap podcast, where brave souls share their remarkable journeys of venturing beyond their comfort zones to craft lives filled with passion and purpose. Tune in to hear the awe-inspiring tales of individuals who dared to defy their fears and embrace the unknown, paving the way for a future they truly adore. Welcome to the Ladies Who Leap podcast. Hi, thank you for joining the Ladies Who Leap podcast. I'm really excited that you're here. And today I have a guest, Katie Kristofic. Katie is the founder and CEO of The Carefullist. It's an online resource for folks providing long-term care to loved ones at home. She started The Carefullist following her family's experience caring for her mom who'd had Alzheimer's disease. Prior to this, Katie spent 20 years in the pharma and biotech industry as a marketing communications professional. She and her husband have 2 kids and a rabbit named Inky. That's great. Welcome, Katie.
Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
In the bio, I don't usually have someone mentioning that they have a rabbit, a pet rabbit. So that's really cool. I know someone who has a pet, guinea pig
Mhm.
named Rolf, but not necessarily a pet rabbit. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, he was my daughter's idea.
Oh, I can only imagine, and probably a beloved member of the family now. Yeah.
Yes, he is. He's got quite the personality.
Well, you and I have spoken a lot about this thing and what it is that you do and what you've experienced in life. In fact, so much so that you joined one of my Ladies Who Leap Club, the private club, the monthly meetups, and I really appreciate that. I usually start with someone's childhood. So, was there something or someone that influenced you in your younger years and helped shape your focus in providing coaching for caregivers and a resource with the Carefullist for caregivers?
Yeah. So I was involved in a lot of music stuff when I was a kid. And so my mom was the person who, drove me all the places for all the rehearsals and all of that. And thankfully, I had the opportunity to do some really decent travel with it. And as part of that, one of the things we were allowed to do or encouraged to do was to sell things in the fall and in the spring to help raise money for those trips. So I would go throughout the neighborhood in the fall and sell, food for the holidays. And then again in the spring, chocolates and candies and things for springtime. And as I made my way through the neighborhood, I would not just sell the stuff, I would sit and talk and visit with the neighbors. And a lot of them were my parents' age, but then there were a fair amount who were more like my grandparents' age. And it was not uncommon that maybe I was the only person who stopped in or, chatted with them that day. So I really loved being able to do that. And even if I wasn't selling stuff, I would ride my bike. And if they were out, I would stop and chat. And, I always had a little bit of an old soul, I've been told.
I was just going to say that. That sounds like as a child you had an old soul. So it's funny that you say that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just loved being able to learn from them and hear their perspective on things and hear their stories. And I love stories. I am a storyteller myself. And actually, to bring it all together, one of those elderly neighbors saw that I had written a short story when I was in elementary school that got published in the newspaper. And she cut it out and wrote a really sweet note along with it, encouraging my writing. And she put $1 in that envelope. And that was the first time I'd ever realized, hey, I could do this for a living. So that's how I, very early days, got started into that communications track.
Wow. So, and we've never talked about your writing. This is actually the first time I heard that story. So that's pretty cool because I know that your leap into dealing and working with caregivers and giving them help was not by accident, that your work
Mhm.
history, you've been in the healthcare industry. Can you talk to that history and how that experience shaped into the work you do today? And please
Yeah.
elaborate more about your writing and if that healthcare industry was a sideline from your writing or if it really included your being able to enhance and use your writing skills.
Yeah. So writing has, for me, always been a way to help organize my thoughts and the way I see and perceive the world. So creating stories and things like that, I've always enjoyed that. And then when my mom got sick, I started doing Facebook posts just to friends and family that started as updates on what was happening and how my family was doing and dealing with it. It was easier than responding to a bunch of texts and that kind of stuff, which is very appreciated. But for anybody who's been a caregiver, you know, you are very limited in your time. So I started doing it that way. And then instead of it being this sort of robotic, here's what happened today, it was more personal. And, you know, how hard it was to be raising two small children and see that juxtaposed with my mom losing her own abilities. And as my kids were growing and she was declining, you know, there was this beautiful horrific juxtaposition of their skill levels. And being able to write about that really helped me to process that. And it also inadvertently got me support because people would read. And, you know, a lot of folks don't know and understand about dementia. So it had an educational aspect to it, which I did not intend. um but just the encouraging comments and you know we may not fully understand what you're dealing with, but we see you, we hear you, and that is so important and so validating for someone who is traveling a journey that they may not personally know anyone else who is currently experiencing that.
Wow. I have to admit, I know these podcasts are not about me, but when my mom was going through her battle with cancer,
Mhm.
Facebook didn't exist yet, but there was blogs, right? You could get,
Yeah.
Apple had a way for you to get a website and then you could just
Mhm.
do a blog. And that's exactly what I did. I wrote stories about what we did with her because it was a long journey and she had friends
Mhm.
and family that loved her so much throughout the country. And you're exactly right. In your case, that journey was much more difficult for you as the caregiver and for her with the disease that she had. In my mom's case, there was a lot of pain and there was a lot of steps that she tried to go through to fight that battle of cancer.
Mhm.
But I didn't have children, and our focus was really about celebrating the good things that she could do in life with her family
Yeah.
and give an update on what is progressing in her so that everybody knew. And it gave people peace of mind, and I enjoyed writing it. It's
Mhm.
exactly what you said. And again, this whole idea of creating the Carefullist online
Mhm.
was, like I said earlier, not by accident. You've been in the healthcare industry for quite a few years before
Yeah.
you started that. And that was before your mom became sick, right?
Correct. Yeah. So to take a couple steps back, um, I had wanted to be a doctor. And that was my first foray into, okay, I want to be able to help people. I like working with people. I particularly like spending time with older folks. So maybe a doctor is the right path. And I got to high school and realized, yeah, you know what? I'm awful at math and science.
Yeah, that's kind of important
So
with a doctor.
So I had to pivot, and I was a communication major in college because of the writing, and that is where my skill set truly lies, is um, you know, just interpersonal communication and learning people's stories and all of that. So I went into sales out of college, working for a company that was a distributor of medical textbooks and supplies. So I was always kind of like skirting around the edge, trying to intertwine those interests. I got to spend my days on college campuses throughout the Northeast. So beautiful work, lots of fun, and flexing that story sharing muscle and really developing a deep relationship with my clients. It wasn't just about, you know, what do the first year med students need? What can I get for you? It was learning about them and their families. And oftentimes caregiving would come up in one way or another. And so I got tired of traveling all the time and moved then to pharma and biotech. And that's where I spent the bulk of my professional career in marketing communications. Um, that was a really interesting experience because I was not working at big pharma. I was working at smaller organizations that were supplying big pharma. So there are multiple steps to getting a medication out onto the market. And the place that I spent the bulk of my time actually invented and perfected the technology for orally disintegrating tablets. So if you've ever taken an allergy med or migraine medicine or anything like that, where you just pop it into your mouth and you don't need water and it dissolves in your mouth, the company that I worked for did that. And what was really interesting to me was, yes, that's very convenient. The reason they developed it is because 60% of the population has trouble swallowing medication. And it's either an aversion to it or there's a physical reason. Folks who have Parkinson's or partial paralysis from stroke or whatever, if they have difficulty swallowing or if there's a risk of choking, they still need a way to take some of those medications because not all medical compounds or the things that comprise a medication can be given intravenously or in a liquid. It really depends on the chemical makeup, how your body is going to absorb it and use it properly. So sometimes tablet or a pill is the best way.
Well, so you're the company that you work for, you were already on that path of trying to find solutions for people that
Mhm.
had in some way a debilitating disease or something that was preventing them from being able to do what all of us are so lucky to be able to do every single day. So
Mhm.
that your whole journey has been about helping people, and it's really interesting that then you were given, I almost want to say that the blessing or the opportunity to be able to take care of your mom and have that in your background, right? Um,
Right.
yeah, because your mom suffered from Alzheimer's. How do you think that that experience, then being able to take care of her and even take care of your children at the same time, how did that experience shape your focus today?
Mm, that's a great question. So I want to be very clear. My dad was her primary caregiver. So I don't want to take anything away from all of the heavy lifting and work that he did. My sister lived close by and she was the backup primary caregiver. And so I, who lived 100 miles away, a couple hours away, didn't want the space and time to be a hindrance in providing. So I started looking at it as what can I do from a remote caregiver or almost like a remote job point of view? What types of tasks can I take on? I can schedule appointments. I can do research. I can find, you know, every Alzheimer's or dementia journey is different, but there are certain things that are universal. What are those things? What products do we need on hand if my dad is going to keep her home to make things easier for him and help to keep her safe? So that was all stuff that I could do that then they didn't have to think about as much. And as we were compiling all of this information, I kept thinking, gosh, it would be great if there was a place that somebody could just go and find all of this. I'm spending hours and hours scouring the internet trying to find what's good, what's right, what we need, what's bad information, and what we shouldn't be looking at. Um, and there wasn't any one thing. And I was really surprised and a little bit frustrated by it because, like you said, my kids were really little. I was working full time. So to spend 3 hours looking for adaptive clothing when I didn't know the word adaptive, it would have been a 15-minute search had I known the word adaptive. But in all of my background and experience, adaptive never came up.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, and this was what time frame was that?
Sure. It was the early 2010s,
Okay.
and she was officially diagnosed in 2015, but she was showing symptoms a good 3 to 5 years prior.
Yeah. So there really wasn't, like you said, any one-stop shop, anywhere to go to get everything that you need to understand how to help people that have this disease. And, dementia is also just something as you get older. So it could be a diagnosis of Alzheimer's, but even, older people that get dementia at some period in their life, this your putting everything together in one place would actually help a lot of different people. And, it's interesting because when we were talking, you said that there's a full scope of types of caregivers, right? And how many there are in our country, because some people, we don't realize that it encompasses so many health issues. So you didn't
Yeah.
just stick to, okay, I'm going to have this for Alzheimer's patients and people that are caregivers for Alzheimer's. You really have covered quite a gambit. Can you fill us in on all those different types of caregivers and what you found out in your research?
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for asking that. So the Carefullist is designed to help anyone who is providing long-term care. So folks who have ALS, Parkinson's, MS, people who've had a stroke that has permanently altered their abilities in some way, um, people who have children who are special needs or medically complex, type 1 diabetes. I mean, these are lifelong, life altering things that people have to learn the disease, learn how it's affecting them, learn how they can best live with it, and what supplies they need, what supports they need, where those resources are. It becomes its own beyond full time job in and of itself. And so it is for all of those folks. Now, with that in mind, and if you think about all the people that that encompasses, and certainly there are some cancers that go on longer than others as well, there are 63 million unpaid caregivers in the United States.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah. That's a huge proportion. You're talking 1 in 5 adults,
And it's only
one
going to
in
go a little higher because as us older folks, I think we're the baby boomers. We're a big percentage of the population. We're all getting older. Yeah.
There are 10,000 baby boomers turning 65 every day between now and 2030.
Wow.
And the average caregiver spends 13 hours or more a month just on research for their person. And so that's where our site comes in because the goal is to give people time back so that they can use it the way that they want to. Folks struggle with self care, and it's incredibly important that you have time to be able to go for a walk or take a nap or read a book where you're not constantly on. Um, and if you don't have to take so much time on research and finding things, it makes it easier to find time for that type of thing or to, reduce the transactional nature of the relationship you now have with the person that you're caring for. That's one of the biggest struggles that I hear folks talk about. The relationship changes so much. It's not parent to child, it's not spouse to spouse, it's caregiver and patient. And that makes it really hard. There is resentment, there's guilt, there's all of these icky feelings that people don't know what to do with. And if they have just a little bit more time in the day to be able to reestablish what that relationship looked like and felt like before the diagnosis or the accident or the surgery or whatever happened, that goes a long way.
That is, to me, probably one of the most important purposes for having your site, because they always say, you have to put the mask on first, right?
Mhm.
To be able to help others. So you really need to take care of yourself. And then the relationship with the person that you're caring for. You
Yeah.
can really, that resentment, when you said that, I was like, oh my gosh, that has to be the first thing, because your life now is not your life in essence. And if
Yeah.
you can even give that person back, like, what did you say, 13 hours a month? That's
Yeah.
huge. That's a lot of
It is.
time.
It is. Yeah. You're talking, 2, 3 hours a week.
Yeah, that's a lot of time for them to just be able to take care of themselves, even if it's a health issue they themselves have,
Yep.
self-care, just have some fun, laughter, visit with their friends, enjoy time, or even enjoy time with the loved one that they're taking care of
Yep.
without having to think about, medicine or what they have to do. It would be more
Mhm.
about what do we want to do with each other and enjoy each other's company as best that we
Yeah.
can for the time that you have, right?
Mhm.
So where did and I ask other people this, and it seems like the reason you got and made this site was out of necessity because you
Mhm.
discovered, and that's like the best reason to do something, but it still takes courage. It still takes a thought that I can do this and I can do it, not only create it, but also create it and get it out so that people are aware that it's available. So, where
Mhm.
did you get that courage and even the know-how to be able to do that?
Sure. This story starts like so many. You kind of hit rock bottom first. And I call 2023 my year of two pushes and a shove. So I had this idea, gosh, 2019. So we're talking like 6 years ago. And I just put it away because I thought somebody else would do it. I am not a tech bro, didn't go to Harvard. I'm a communications person who went to a very good state school in Pennsylvania. Um, but what 2023 taught me, and I'll share what happened, um, is that people are not going to solve a problem they don't have. And so I was laid off twice from corporate America in 2023, and my mom passed away. So I kind of crash landed into October of that year with way more time on my hands than I had ever had in my entire adult life. And I mean, no job, no care. So it was wonderful in some sense that I had a ton of time leading into the holidays. My kids were still fairly little-ish, young is probably the better word. So, there was not the push and pull and guilt of, well, I should be here and I should be doing this. I could just focus on Halloween costume parades and class parties and, their birthdays are in the fall and all of that. So there was a good side to it, but it was also the most disoriented and lost I've ever been as an adult.
Yeah.
And this thought had been percolating for at that point, 4 years, just kept coming back. And the thought of, especially at that time, the job market was not great, of having to send hundreds of resumes to not even have them be read by a human being and maybe get an interview and do that process 8 times for them to decide, actually, we don't have the budget to hire somebody right now. I could not stomach it. I was like, I am not doing this again. And so my husband and I agreed, this is as good a time as any. Let's see what comes of it. So I reserved the domain name and thought, okay, well, now what do I do? And thankfully, because of my marketing communications background, I had been the lead on multiple projects for launching websites. And so I knew the general gist of how that project flows, what information you need, but I did not have any of that at my disposal. I did not have a team, I did not have that budget. So that was like, how do I do this without all of those resources? And so it just became one of those things where it's okay if it's a stripped down version at first. Just get the idea out there, take the leap, do the thing, and you can make it what you want it over time. It does not have to be perfect at the outset. And I'm saying this now, and it sounds really easy. It took me months to get over that. Like, I want it to work a certain way, I want it to look a certain way. Reality is, it's not going to do that at first because I don't have all of these things at my disposal. So, really, I just needed to create a proof of concept and show people this is what I mean when I say resources in one place for caregivers. This is what I'm trying to do. Um, so that's how it started. And I've been doing it for 2 years now.
We'll be right back. What if the loudest voice in your head could become your biggest ally instead of your worst critic? I'm Lisa, founder of Ladies Who Leap Coaching and your podcast host. And I help you release the negative inner chatter and step into leadership with real confidence and emotional freedom. Together, we unravel those old patterns and rewire your inner dialogue so you can lead, love, and live from a place of deep self-love and unshakable confidence. If you're ready to fully trust your own power, let's talk. Go to ladieswholeap.com and click on the Let's Connect button to set up a call. And we'll talk about what's truly possible for you. Let's get back to the show. Has it shaped over the years to be something that actually brings you money, and or is this specifically just to help others and your passion?
Yeah, so it's a little bit of both.
Okay.
Right now, it's very lopsided one way or the other, as in money not coming in. But um, I am doing marketing consulting on the side.
Okay.
So I am still using my professional skills. So I don't want anybody to be like, "Oh, she's just gone all in and has no money coming in." No, that is not my reality. So I am doing that on the side, part-time. And that is what's helping to, fund my family. And of course, my husband has a full-time position. So I'm very fortunate in that way. And there is a pricing component to the Carefullist. So the information is divided into two buckets of content and resources. The first is the caregiving piece, and the second is grief, because those two things do not exist separately. And so the grief component is free of charge. Everything, every resource, everything within the grief section is totally free of charge. The caregiving piece is membership based, it's an annual membership, and it is $49.
Yeah. $49 is worth 13 hours of your time, every
Every
month.
month.
Yeah, definitely, especially if what you're going through. And it's very specific. So it's not having to go everywhere like you did to be able to
Right.
find information on what you need. It's actually all in one place.
Yeah.
So that caregiver side, I mean, not caregiver, excuse me, the grief side,
Hmm.
is this something that came over your experience and adding that to it because you started with the bare bones, right? And then you figured that out. How did that come into play? And what is that all about? Is this something that you're getting into? Is helping people get over grief, or is it just on the site for resources to help with that? How does that work?
Sure. So because our particular path was dementia, um, there was grief far before my mom passed away. And as I've spoken with other folks who have been caregivers, no matter what their loved one had, there is grief always before the person passes. There
Yes.
is grief at the diagnosis. There is grief when they start to lose their abilities to do certain things. There is grief when you think about the life you thought was going to be that no longer is or can't be now for whatever reason. And there was a term that I learned after my mom passed that I wish I had known prior, and it is anticipatory grief. And that helped me understand why I felt the way I felt for as long as I did. There were points where I was like, am I losing it? What is going on with me? And it turns out it was grief. With every change, with particularly in dementia, you know changes are coming, but you don't know when. And you know they're going to keep happening. And so you kind of develop this, I don't want to say fear, but certainly anxiety over the passage of time. And what that really is anticipatory grief. You're grieving the things you know you're going to lose. And I didn't want people to find out what that was and find that there is a plethora of resources and people who get it until after their person passes. You should be able to have support for those feelings as they're happening. And it is perfectly normal to feel that way, even when you can look at, speak to, hug the person um, that you're grieving.
Yeah, so this is really important, and it's not something that somebody necessarily thinks about. When you were talking about it, it's anticipating the person's changes and things that are going to be lost, that you're going to lose within the relationship, and also anticipating their passing,
Mhm.
and feelings about someone who is suffering right in front of your eyes, and knowing that they are going to pass at some point. There is a piece of you that almost feels guilty. I know I felt it, that you
Mhm.
want them to pass so that they don't suffer anymore, so that God gives them grace, right?
Mhm.
And that feeling has to be part of this grief because you're anticipating what's happening to them, and you're feeling a little bit of shame, possibly
Mhm.
because you're thinking, I actually want them to go. So
Mhm.
I'm here sitting here preparing myself for what's going to happen, and the person may or may not be able to prepare themselves if they're cognizant or not.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a really good thing. And I don't think people talk about it at all. I don't think I've
They
heard about
don't.
this discussed. This is really the first time that this has come up.
People don't talk about it because of the shame and because they think they're doing it wrong. And they're afraid to tell someone because what if they judge me? You know, like it is very hard for someone to say what you just said, which is, I hope they pass. And it's not that you are wishing them dead. And most rational human beings get that. There are some who may not have the best reaction, but overall, people understand that that is a place of love. And really, the more that I think about it and the more I talk about it with people, it is the ultimate act of love that you are wishing that person to be free of pain, even though it is going to cause you some of the biggest, worst pain you have ever experienced.
Yeah, so really it's not being selfish. So there's nothing
No,
to be shameful about it.
not at
You're
all.
just wanting the best for that person.
Right. And you shouldn't feel guilty either.
Right. So you have a podcast
I
that's
do.
titled same title as your website, which is The Carefullist. So I think it's Carefullist the podcast. Is that, am I saying that correctly?
That's
And
correct.
and it sounds self-explanatory, but can you talk to the focus of the podcast and what it offers your
Sure.
listeners?
Yeah, thank you for asking. So, Carefullist, the podcast, um, got its name because I am a huge fan of comedy and I love Mel Brooks. And Spaceballs is one of my all-time favorite movies. So there's a bit within it where, they're talking about merchandising and it's Carefullist the lunchbox, Carefulist. No, Spaceballs the lunchbox, Spaceballs the coaster. Um, and the reason I went that route is because finding joy and finding humor in the hardest thing you've ever done and in the darkest corners of where you've ever gone is a survival skill. And so the conversations on the podcast always start with folks telling their caregiving story. And then we talk about what they're doing now, because one of the hardest things is figuring out who you are and what you're going to do when your caregiving journey ends. And so a lot of the folks who come on have written a book, they've created a product. It was something that they needed that didn't exist. They've started a program where they are coaching other caregivers, or they've gone back to school and now they are a nurse or they're a clinical social worker. Whatever the case may be, what have they done after being a caregiver? And I will say 9 times out of 10, what they do after is not what they did before, because who you are after is a completely different person.
Yeah. Yeah, I can only imagine, especially when you're a primary caregiver and you had years of focusing on someone else's well-being.
Yeah,
And now you're turning into, okay, I want to focus on my well-being, but this had an effect on them, I'm sure, just like you said. So what they do, and then finding out of necessity things that they needed to create because it didn't exist before and it was something that they needed. Yeah, they
right.
say, the mother of invention, right, is out of necessity. What else, before I ask for your favorite quote mantra or positive affirmation, other than the Carefullist and the Carefullist, the podcast, what other things do you offer as yourself, as Katie Kristofic?
Um,
Is there?
I
I
I
don't know.
yeah, I am a speaker. So for organizations, conferences, anything like that, certainly I can talk about caregiving, but also themes of resilience and how you truly don't know how strong you are until you're thrown into a situation where the only option is to swim.
Yeah,
So I do speaking engagements in addition to the site and to the podcast.
awesome. Well, now I will ask, what is your favorite quote, mantra, and positive affirmation to share with everybody?
I really love that you do this, first of all, because my college dorm I covered with quotes that I had found through reading and whatever else. And so I'm going to share one that was actually on my wall throughout my entire college experience. And it is a George Bernard Shaw quote. People are always blaming their circumstances for what they are. I don't believe in circumstances. The people who get on in this world are the people who get up and look for the circumstances they want. And if they can't find them, they make them.
Wow, I'm getting chills because that is exactly what you did in this instance. So you knew, isn't that amazing? That's something that you put up on your wall in college and
Yeah.
then literally lived your life by it the rest of your life. Well, I know you've shared information, and anyone who's listening that is a caregiver currently or was a caregiver can really appreciate everything you have to say. And hopefully, it gave them some extra oomph in their step to be able to continue what they're doing,
Mm.
not to feel in any way resentful of the person that they're taking care of, and then to know that there's some place they can go. And I'm going to on the video version, you're going to see the name of the podcast. I mean, the name of the website, but I'm going to spell it for everyone who's listening because it's a little different. It's Care, C-A-R-E, full, F-U-L, and then a second L for list. So Carefullist. So as long as everybody spells it right, it's .com, right? Carefullist.com.
That's right. Yep. It's a carefully created list. Careful list.
That's awesome. So thank you, Katie, so much for coming on. This has been a really not only touching, and I appreciate you being so honest about your journey, but it's very informative. There's a lot of information that you provided, and a lot more is going to be on carefullist.com that people can go to in order to get information. And thank you for being on my podcast. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
So everyone, please like, subscribe, comment. You know, it's very hard for me to ask for things, so please. And share with other people the Ladies Who Leap podcast, because I do have amazing women that come on and share their stories so that you can find your courage to be able to leap out of your comfort zone and grow. Have a great day. Thanks so much for listening or watching. Please subscribe to the Ladies Who Leap podcast to be notified of new episodes. And I would love to hear from you. Let me know what works, what doesn't, and if you have a story to tell, please reach out. Come join the Leap community at the Ladies Who Leap Club Facebook group. Remember, leaping out of your comfort zone is where the growth happens.